coming through well, and Carolyn usually helps us make sure the sound is coming through.
Oh, there she is.
I just got the reminder, the notification that we are going live. Turn off. Dave's taking a promo pic.
Are you guys smiling? Hang on.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, you need a South Langley mug at home.
Oh, you know what? Okay, so I house sat for the youth recs one time, and they have a few of those mugs, and that was the best. The mugs are great.
I have two. I have one that I bought, and my parents, when they were newcomers, they picked up a newcomer gift, and they left their mug at my house. So we have two South Langley mugs.
Yeah, no, I got nothing. I actually, I have to admit that when we at first had those gift bags, that I didn't love the idea. I don't know. There was something in my heart that was like, are we bribing people here? Like, what?
Oh, that's definitely something that we even talked about. We talked through as a staff.
Yeah, I know that would be a consideration, of course. But no, I just had this weirdness against the mugs and the whatever, and it was well, really, but then actually after using the mug, it was oh, this is a really nice thing.
Yeah, totally.
It's really nice. Yeah. So now this morning I do not have a South Langley mug, but I do have cold coffee.
Oh, nice, excellent.
Yours is also cold?
Yeah, I don't have a microwave, and so I just roll with it.
You just
love that for you.
Yeah. You just do the full spectrum of hot coffee to iced coffee and everything in between.
The full experience. Nothing better, man. I just really, really enjoy coffee that much.
All right.
Just like a true appreciator over here.
Good morning, Annika.
Yes, good morning.
And Carolyn and Brian. Sorry, Brian. I guess I should acknowledge Brian.
That's how many we have? 8 watching. All right.
Oh, Carolyn's Rosie is digging holes in the mud. What's your Rosie doing?
She's
It's a great thing for Rosies to do.
And Brian.
I got to see Rosie this morning, and she has new pajamas.
Oh. Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's pretty cute. So maybe we'll.
we might get a cameo from Rosie in her new jammies.
That would be wonderful.
It was a big thing because Justine ordered some clothes for the kids from Old Navy, and told them they were coming. And Connor is really into his outfits, and so it was every day, Mom, when is the package coming? When are the clothes coming? But it was delayed, right? All the everything's different now.
Yep.
And so it sat at the warehouse for I think a couple weeks, and then it was slow getting here. So every day, when's the package coming? So it was a big they burst in here while I was working, and they were the package came, and they showed me all their new clothes.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
These days, it is the small things.
I guess it is.
They sure are big.
Yeah. Your Connor and my Liam into the clothes. Yeah. They're both stylish dudes. My Liam is not into clothes at all. In fact, he rarely wears them. Yeah, he's also in my room right now. You want to come say hi, Liam? Are you gonna come? Okay.
Special guest, our first special guest. Hey, Liam.
Hi, Liam.
Hi.
What have you been doing today?
Mostly watching drawing videos.
Drawing videos. What have you been learning how to draw?
So, but Mama turned it off. First when I was about this drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Maybe you can do some more drawing videos later.
Yeah, maybe. All right, mister. Oh, we're supposed to do table topics.
Tabletop. Well, yeah.
Has
Is
that
it-
been a
is
thing
it
that's
time for that?
happening, or is that like? I feel like
We
it
have-
hasn't happened the last couple weeks.
Yeah, because we're too chatty sometimes.
Okay, one sec.
Sometimes we do them. Oh, I see. He doesn't even have them here. Oh, Dave, now you're Alicia.
Oh, look at that photo.
I know, right? I want to know what
Let's
child.
speculate.
I want to know what child is on his shoulder.
Right, let's speculate the circumstances.
Oh,
dang
never
it.
mind. He's back.
Can you be cool about how I cropped my own child out of my profile?
No, we're just gonna speculate where you were and what that scene might have been.
What child was that, Dave?
My name says Alicia now.
I know because I haven't had a chance to change it.
Okay, Liam, can you go downstairs now? Buddy? Go.
Brian, you've never realized the similarity between Carolyn and Dave's kids' names? It has been discussed many times, Brian. And so we keep asking when Dave is going to get a dog named Megan.
It's not a dog name. It's a person name. This is what I get for giving Rosie such a cute name. It's also kind of apparently a dog name. All right.
Hi, Heidi.
Which Rosie did come first?
I don't know. Carolyn, when did you get your Rosie?
When did you acquire your Rosie? Dave, when did you acquire your Rosie? Good morning, Rita. Glad to see you this morning.
All right.
Annika says she's met a lot of Megan dogs.
No way. That's crazy. August
I want to know your
2019.
number.
Okay, so Carolyn, I had the first. I had Rosie first.
I claim the Rosie name.
It really, really matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a table talk?
Yeah, we should probably do our little intro bit, right?
Oh yeah, right.
Because we're super professional.
Yeah, let's take some time just in case there's anybody tuning in for the first time, or take it away, Dave.
They might be, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Coffee Time, South Langley Church's midweek live stream. I'm Dave. I'm the lead pastor. Above me and to the right is...
You got to point. You got to do the point. That's the best part. Who are you introducing?
I don't know. Over
here?
I'm waiting for the lag, right?
No, that's it. Oh, you're... Gotcha. Well, you're pointing at...
Yeah, Sarah, I'm pointing at you.
Dave, you can just look at the Zoom call.
No, I got a split screen going. You guys are stacked.
Oh, I see. You don't look at yourself?
Anyways.
My name is Sarah. I'm the director of children's ministry at South Langley Church, and I am the person trying to put this stream together, keep it running. So you may see me sometimes. If I'm looking this way, you know that I'm working on something on the stream.
All right, and over here...
Sweet. You got it. My name is Alicia, and I am a member of South Langley Church, and also a teacher, and an auntie, and many other things.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, Alicia.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about teaching later, and teaching is something that's definitely been reshaped right now. And Yeah, but why don't we start with our icebreaker
Okay,
table?
before we get to that icebreaker table topic, I just need to acknowledge this, that Carolyn says that in her defense, they named their animals after Lord of the Rings characters, and Rosie was just too good to leave out. So, like, I think that's a great justification of. I want to know what other Lord of the Rings characters there's been.
Also, I'm wondering, Dave, how you feel about the fact that Rosie is Sam's hobbit wife, and how that.
She is marvelous. So
I'm good.
That's a great.
He's like, cause she's like his, kind of his north star, like his whole thing, right? That he wants to get to the end of the journey, get home, and marry Rosie, and that's his. She's his like happily ever after. So,
yeah.
I mean that's
true.
pretty good.
That is, and she is pretty cute.
Is she? I don't.
The character in the film is
in
like
the film.
Cast her,
oh,
yeah,
perfectly.
they cast her as a cutie, so
Love it.
I'm googling her right now.
Sam's hobbit wife, Rosie.
Yeah, no, she's a good one. Definitely don't show any shots of her hairy feet. So.
Oh yeah, I remember her. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's coming back to you now.
Yeah, with the curly hair.
Oh, one day when Rosie brings a Sam home.
What are you gonna say?
Yeah.
Dave? That's the icebreaker right there.
I'm gonna say, how many rings have you thrown into Mountain Dew?
And then you're gonna be that like awkward like dad. Sam will be like, "What?"
Carolyn says you named someone Eowyn. You named a pet Eowyn.
Oh, that is a great name. I would name a hamster Eowyn. Eowyn seems like a great hamster name.
Okay. By the way, in case you're just tuning in and you haven't done this before, you can interact in the YouTube live chat. That's where all these comments are coming from that we're reading out on the air here. And so if you're on a smart TV or something like that, you can maybe pull up YouTube on another device that's got a keyboard and stuff, and you can interact. You can also text in comments.
Your phone is off of silent?
Yes, it is now. And people won't see those in the chat, but we'll call them out if they're helpful.
If they're not helpful, Dave just ignores them.
I will be the sole judge of whether or not they're helpful.
And post your pictures.
Oh yeah, do that too.
We love
Post
seeing those.
Of yourself attending virtual coffee time, and use the hashtag. And yeah,
great.
Here we are.
Carolyn, that line, "I am no man," like, yeah, that's a good one. And also, like, even though Sarah said that she thinks that Eowyn's the best name for a hamster, I think that I personally relate to that character maybe the most.
Oh, yeah.
Hamster side.
I just love giving like small animals like really epic names.
All right.
What's our icebreaker for the day? All
right, you ready? I'm gonna take it from the middle.
Oh, I hate. How do you feel about this, Alicia? Like,
I could care less.
Oh, it hurts my soul every time.
Here we go. From the very middle. Okay.
Oh, that's a good look.
If you could live on any beach, which beach would you choose?
Oh,
that's why the look. Okay.
Now here, this is like a little bit like, in part like sentimental, like what I want to live. So my favorite beach, like I've got a few different like favorite beaches, but like so there's one right near my childhood home. So I grew up in Victoria, and I grew up right near Mount Doug Park, and so like we would walk to the beach. And it's this really cool park because so there's Mount Doug. It's actually like like a couple feet short of being a mountain, but it's this really cool place because you can like go from the top of the mountain all the way down to the beach in like a Like if you're running it, you can do it in like 5 minutes. If you're walking it, it's like maybe a 15-minute walk from the top of the mountain down all the way to sea level. And like that was just like a really great place growing up, and it's like my favorite place. And there's this one tree that has like over the years, like I think the beach side is like slowly getting eroded away, and so this tree is now like growing horizontal and it grows out over the water. And so like that's like still every time I go to Victoria, like get to the beach. Sometimes, often, like before even stopping to see my family, because like I have to like drive through Mount Doug Park to get to their house after the ferry, and like regularly like stop as I'm driving to parents' house, get out, climb the tree, you know, like take off the shoes, climb out there, and just like sit on the branches. And that's like where I always consider my like my one of like my prayer spots. And then another thing that I used to say all the time, like, is that like I gotta go walk the beach with Jesus, because like I just like how often, like, you know, like, and like Jesus is like pictured like walking the beach and stuff. And so whenever I think of that, I always think of Mount Doug Beach. And so part of me is like, oh, would I want to live there, or do I want to leave that as like a special retreat place? But that's definitely one of the beaches that I think of. Or I could just, you know, say like, you know, some beach in like Hawaii would be really nice to live at.
Some beach in Hawaii.
Oh, we've got family right outside of Waikiki, so you know, that would be actually a viable option.
Alicia, what do you think?
So yeah,
and people can also drop your answers in the chat if you're viewing.
Yeah, please.
I lived in Victoria also for a couple of years, and I live right near Willow Beach.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. And I really like what you said, Sarah, about like, should that just be left? You know, like left to be its own time and its own. And I think that would be like, as much as I was like, oh yeah, that would be great, or like Oak Bay or something. It's like, yeah, you know what though? Like it was its own special place with special time. So I think that I would live on Vancouver Island, but it might be further north, like closer to Comox, or like you know, somewhere up there perhaps. Or no, you know what? Maybe one of the Gulf Islands actually. That feels very me.
like what, like Pender, or like
Galliano.
Okay.
Yeah.
My grandma lived on Galliano when I was growing up.
Yeah, like there's something about that life that's just like so resonant to me.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think that like, and that's maybe also why I would maybe be inclined a little bit more north. There's some isms of, you know, spaces and places that maybe feel a little bit more resonant than being in Victoria. Although I also feel like my heart is on Vancouver Island in so many ways.
Oh,
like,
it's such a good place.
Yeah.
But Galliano, or like any of the Gulf Islands, like, is so good because you can so easily jump over to, you know, like Galliano, like it's like pretty easy to get to Nanaimo, and you can like you're still close to the city, and so like can get like some of those things, but it's still island life. Yeah. Like there really is like an island way of life.
Right. I just nothing about that surprises me, Alicia.
Oh yeah, I can just remember visiting my grandma on Galliano, and like just like walking everywhere in bare feet, and her neighbors had like goats or something, but like I don't think there was like, I was pretty young, so, but I don't think that there was like a fence between their yards, so like the goats were just like community goats. So that would be the great.
Brian, I think that might be my favorite compliment. You might be the most island person that doesn't live on the island.
Yeah.
When I think, honestly, when I think about Vancouver Island, it's just like, like if, and the thing, honestly, so I would move there like in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Except that I value my family, and just like, yeah, where we're at right now, it just doesn't make sense for me to move there. I don't know if that will always be the case, but there's, yeah, certainly
just take them with you
for the next chunk of time. And also because of the fact that I have moved around so much throughout my 20s. Just recently have I really started to kind of like establish here in more significant ways, and like my deepest friendships are basically in other places because of the moving, and so I really am valuing being here and staying. So yeah, that's part of it. But certainly my heart's on the island. Yeah. Heidi says Hawaii is my happy place. Anywhere near a beach on the sunny side of Hawaiian Island would be my place. Yeah, I couldn't like Sarah. You've been to Hawaii, yeah?
Yeah, we've got family like on in Waikiki.
Right, and so your comment about like, oh yeah, being Hawaii would be good. I just have no context. I'm just like,
I love Hawaii. I love the like even like the climate there. I don't handle heat well, but like Hawaii, it's changing in the like recent years. They're getting a little bit hotter, but like growing up, like I cannot handle like Mexico heat or even like Californian heat. Like that just like messes with my system. But because of the trade winds in Hawaii, like it's just everything that I like. You can just like walk around barefoot and go in the water every day, and it's still beautiful and warm. But yeah,
that's so great. That's like so. I don't know if anyone's heard of or been to Desolation Sound.
Yeah.
So it's like just north of the Gulf Islands. In the summertime, the whole like just you're diving into the ocean and it's like this is like a bath, like that kind of like tropical feel. It's just because of the way the currents run up there. It's like it's so which is maybe one of the reasons why I want to be on the Gulf Islands. So just a short trip north is in paradise in the summertime.
Yeah, totally. Talia here says Chesterman Beach, Tofino, so another Vancouver Island location.
It's so rugged and beautiful. Oh my gosh, this is an aesthetic over there that's just like so good.
Yeah, I love Tofino. It's a bit of a trek. I actually might, one that like moving back to Victoria is possible. Like I don't actually ever see myself moving to Hawaii, but different type of beach. I could see myself moving so outside of Port Alberni, so kind of like on Tofino area. Outside of Port Alberni, there's Sprout Lake, and it's the most like one of the most beautiful lakes that I've ever been to. And I have some friends who live there, and I've been up there in the summer a few times. And it's just like this gorgeous, like crystal clear lake. You kayak out across it, and you're like halfway in the middle of this giant lake, and you can see the bottom. And like you're convinced, like, oh, if I just jump out of the boat, and like I probably would be able to touch, but it's actually so deep. But it's just beautiful. And one side of the lake is like residential, where like the houses, like go their yards go all the way down to the lake. But then on the other side of the lake is there's a provincial park, and so you can actually like kayak to the provincial park and like just be surrounded by even more nature. Like it's already a pretty like remote location, but love Sprout Lake.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on the island, but I've never been there. It sounds, based on our comments here, it sounds like I should make my way.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? What beaches are you thinking about?
I think I'm probably gonna be Team Hawaii. if we're dreaming here, then I'm changing climates, and I'm a warm climate, sunny day, beach kind of guy.
Is the Filipino in you?
It could be, yeah. I don't know. Like if it could be perpetual summer, then I would choose maybe one of our BC beaches. But if I'm living there and I'm gonna be there year round, I'm gonna go somewhere warmer. I don't need the rain.
I see my cousin. Sometimes I think like, oh, like if you lived in Hawaii, would it lose like the allure of like going to the beach? But like I see my like cousins or my dad's cousins like posting pictures with their kids like on the beach and stuff like every weekend in Hawaii. I'm like, no, it does. Like the beach is still the best. When you live, I really like what Steven says. Alberta has the best beaches. Not actually.
Bro, sorry. Sorry, this is such a downer for you. We're fantasizing right now, so you can fantasize about whatever about leaving Alberta and finding a beautiful beach somewhere else.
I like, as a Philip Irish, Dave is torn between his two native islands.
Oh man.
Doesn't sound.
It doesn't sound like he's torn at all.
No,
Like,
They're I mean, from what I understand, they're both gorgeous.
but one is probably a lot warmer than the other.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to move to Ireland, I'd definitely be flying elsewhere several times a year if I could afford it.
there is something though. Okay, so I really would love to visit Ireland. It's actually one of the places that I really would love to visit, and it's I think a lot on account of the rugged and like the misty and the damp and the like. There's something about that aesthetic and about that climate that's like has its own allure and draw, and it's actually something about like the west coast of Vancouver Island that I really like, although much different. Like the idea of well, like I don't know, maybe it's just in the enduring of those wet times or stormy times, etc. That there's something about me that's like, yeah, that's like some good there, and
I would
just like drawn to it.
I would miss and I think that's also one of the things that I like about Hawaii is that there is like different types of weather. Like you get tropical storms, you get some variation. Like I couldn't live somewhere like California where it's just like hot or really hot. like I need some, like, born and raised on the West Coast, I need some like rainfall to be a regular occurrence.
Yeah, I really appreciate the rain a lot. I think it's one of the things that I actually am. Well, you know what? Like it's over time too. It's like, okay, this is the climate, this is the weather. Like in light of where I live, like what is the good here? And so even just like the days when it turns to rain and the smells change so much, like that. Even just like breathing that in and just realizing like, oh, there is such goodness here. And yeah, I think there's a lot of me that really wants, I don't know, to wake up myself and also to wake other people up to like, the rain is so ideal and good, and like there's so much about it that's like literally essential.
Yeah.
So you're saying that like even though you're in a place that maybe isn't the place that you would choose to be, that there is a certain blessedness about it?
There sure is, Dave. And you know what contributes to the blessedness? A shift of heart.
A what?
A change of heart.
Aha.
Before we move on, I see what you guys are doing here, but I just
Sarah,
have to.
I just segued so hard.
I know, but I really love what Tally is. Tally is just like, Christoph and Maria, you guys already live on a beach. Stop. We're all like.
But it's true. Maria's comment is like, it is apples and oranges. Like it totally is, right? And the apples and oranges, like they both have blessings, right? Like.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were actually, Alicia, just gonna check in with you. You're a teacher.
Yeah. Sure am.
How's that going right now?
Oh man, yes, it has its own blessings and
yeah, good answer. Yeah.
Its own trials, that's for sure. It's both and, which like we'll segue into our discussion about the Sermon on the Mount, but like it certainly is both and in terms of what is good and what is hard. And let's see what to say. I teach food studies is the name of the course that I teach, and I teach grade 9s and 10s, and I miss them so much. Yesterday I was reflecting on the fact that like somebody brought up the idea that all teachers have this like superpower, or like their superpowers are directly correlated to how we connect with students, and our ability to connect with students, and in the removal of like presence together, that those superpowers can't be exercised anymore. And so it feels like there's a gutting of sorts that goes along with that. And then even just thinking about expanding beyond like teachers, there's so many people who are in the same boat. And then I was also thinking about the fact that I'm like, oh, there's like a lot of people who like don't even know or haven't discovered like what is my superpowers in life, etc. And so like
Mm.
my heart is just with everyone who has this sense of loss, like within this time and also like outside of this time. And so anyway, like along the idea of like one of my biggest strengths, well, I would go as far as to say is like some of my biggest strengths period have to do with my ability to relate and connect, and not being able to do that in the same way is like it's just really odd. It's really odd. It's like so for example, uh, students come into the classroom, they're sitting around tables, there's a buzz in the room because everyone's chatting and everyone's interacting, and as a teacher you read the room, you find access points to interact with students and based on like the idea of coming alongside their energy and like and using energy and that kind of a thing, and so there's like a lot of coming alongside for me and working with what is in front of me. That's kind of where my biggest strengths are, and that's just like totally removed. And and it's odd and weird, and I don't like it at all. But there's so then the question is like, okay, so what, like how can I try to utilize my superpower still, like even in this circumstance? And so I'm finding ways to connect with students online that feels really as meaningful as it can. And some of the biggest like the greatest moments so far have been the ones that are like, oh, like that. Well, so as I reflect on them, I'm like, oh, like that's the blessing. Like that's where it is. So for example, yesterday I had an online interaction with a student who has been like super struggling, hasn't done any work for me at all. However, the win is the fact that I had a conversation with him and he was honest with me. And this was a follow up conversation to the one prior. And he had actually done some of the things that we had chatted about him doing in relation to his other coursework. Like that. And at the end of the conversation, me being like, hey, don't worry about food stuff still. Like, keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to check in with you again next week. I said, thanks. And his reply was like, thank you, Ms. Kier. And that was like, for a grade 10-year-old grade 10 guy to be like expressing that gratitude and being so honest. It's like, oh, like that's the juice, like that's this is what matters. And so along with that, there's a whole there's so many and this is a blessing too, like there's so many questions coming up now around teaching and education and what is actual, what should learning look like, and what can it look like, and what are the possibilities that we've been closing ourselves off to because of the way that we've structured school in general. And and so some of that, there's a lot of questions for me in terms of relationship and connection and all of those that that have come up during this time. And what are we prioritizing as important, not only during this time, because relationship has been prioritized, at least in the Langley district, is the most important thing, which I'm really appreciative of, but then also beyond this time, like what are some of the things that that we deem to be important and that we actually spend a lot of time and energy on, that like maybe like, or like what are we stifling on account of prioritizing those things,
right?
Because because I think there's a lot of, and I even think, so back to my original thoughts about where I'm strong, is like I'm good at creating spaces. I'm good at creating space for students to learn and to invite them into that space. And so in what ways as teachers can we be learning how to do that better, to make sure that that we're helping foster like healthy humans,
Mm-hmm.
period. Like, and that the learning, and there's, we know this as teachers, and there's robust research that supports this, that like the learning um is increased, and there is, it's more, um it's it sinks in more when humans are becoming better humans, like, and have space um to be in a good and safe place, and to be in an honest place, and that kind of a thing, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's raising all kinds of questions about that, and about time too, like timing of learning and our expectations around that too. Like, that's been a big one too.
Interesting. I'm really like just at, like as you're sharing, I'm reminded I had a so I actually went to Oak Bay High, and I had a physics teacher. I took physics 11, 12 in like the same year, like it was a combo course. And it was really interesting because he would so often, well, one, speaking of Willows Beach, we would, as a, like we were a fairly small class because it was this combo class, and so he kind of like let us self direct. So he like we'd regularly go down to Willows Beach for fish and chips as a class, and he's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, like if that's what you guys like, you guys are old enough, like we're grade 11, 12 students. So he's like, if that's what you guys want to do, like that's cool. It just means that you're gonna have to put more work in later. But he kind of like let us self direct in that way. But he would often join us,
Mm.
and like one of the cool things as we'd be sitting on Willows Beach is like he'd be bringing physics into even just like our conversations sitting on the beach or whatever, like he'd always bring it
Yeah.
back. But then people used to like not laugh at this teacher, but kind of critique him because often he would put on a, like, this is like 10 years ago now, so like digital and online like was like coming into the classroom, but it wasn't a regular thing. But he'd regularly put on a Khan Academy video, for teaching a new concept. And he said, like, he always said, like, I think this is the future of teaching. Like, these guys are way better at teaching the, like, first introducing and like teaching the concepts. They're way better at it than I am. But what I as a teacher offer to you is the ability to understand what you're struggling with, and
Mm.
like helping you understand that, but also like just like building, like he would say, like building relationships with you, and like helping you through this stage of your life. And so he's like, I'm gonna so like we'll, at the start of the class, we'll watch this Khan Academy video together, and then we'll ask questions and we'll interact with it together. And like that's a more valuable use of my time,
Yeah.
than than
Yeah.
planning out like a lesson plan and how I'm gonna teach this. Like, let's watch this 10-minute video, and then we have 50 minutes left to engage with it.
Yeah.
And like at that time, that felt like, oh, like this teacher's like so like like such a rebel, like he's like utilizing these videos, like he's not even teaching. but
Right.
it's like, oh, now like
Yeah.
that's what we're
Well,
seeing
like,
a little bit.
yeah, like not even teaching. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is, yeah, what are you thinking that teaching is then?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And
what is,
now, yeah, it's like those are the lessons that like I remember the most. And like
yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
understood physics so much better because he utilized these videos that were so good at explaining a concept. And then yeah, he would dig into it even deeper with us, or like
Yeah.
figure out where we were struggling. And
Totally, yeah. With the ability to like, well, to weave it into the conversation, to weave it into
yeah.
based on your understanding and what you're observing in the world around you, like,
Yeah.
that's, no, that's incredibly huge. And yeah, on the idea of like, um, yeah, what is teaching and learning, like, that's that's a really big conversation. That's a really huge one.
Yeah.
And it just, oh man, there's so many ideas that have been important for me, including, before we went live, I was mentioning to Dave that like the like letter grades and grading and doing assessment in a very like, plaster a number on it and move on kind of a way is just like incredibly dissonant to me, and I have a really hard time with it on so many accounts. Because assessing defining what learning is in the first place is a really like impossible task, and then also assessing when learning is actually happening, especially, and that's, so I got interim reports coming up, um, which is just like my least favorite, because as of right now, it's like, like, how do I even, like, you deserve an A because you're surviving, child, and then another one is like, like, let's get your butt in gear because I know your capability and I know that you're just not setting an alarm in the morning and you need to, like, that, like, that kind of a thing. And so how do you put a number on those things? Like, oh man. And like, yeah, learning itself is, I think the metaphors that we use for learning are really sometimes poor. And so, yeah, like, we're moving away from the idea that moving is linear. Like, I think that we say we're moving away from it more than we're actually moving away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, yeah, so for example, a helpful metaphor, one of them anyway, has been that of a rhizome. Do you know what a rhizome is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
So it's like, so so it's like a plant, or yeah, a being, a creature who's there's stuff happening underneath the surface, and then something will shoot up above the surface, and like ferns grow in this way, for example, right? Like the rhizome's underneath, and then you shoot up, and there's then your fiddlehead that turns into a fern, and it continues and continues, and so there's a lot of ecological life that function that way, and learning, like, to understand learning, to some degree in that way can be helpful, because you don't know what's going on underneath the surface. Like, you don't know, and then like, that at this point in time down the line, that's not tomorrow, there might be the evidence of the learning, come up in a way, that you're like, oh, I didn't know that was growing underneath there, right? Like that, that kind of a thing. And so there's, yeah, I think it's really hard and really complex, and this is like, that's a generally speaking kind of a conversation, but especially during this time, like, yeah, that's been a really big challenge for me.
Yeah. So much of it is also like about like relationships. Like, I know, like Dave and I have had conversations about this, but for us, like, part of our job, like, it is teaching. Like we are supposed to be like, like teaching people, like spiritual truths, blah blah blah. But also like but so much of it is relational, and I really took for granted like how prior I could, like, in kids ministry, I could fulfill those things at the same time. I don't necessarily think the same it was always true for Dave, because Dave was much more a, like, I stand at the front, I teach to you, and like he would have to work on the relationship development at other times. But in kids,
the stage and then the foyer,
like, yeah, the stage and then the foyer, where for kids, like, so much of my, like, as we were teaching, like kids ministry, there's just more time for interaction and like checking in, and so like on Sunday morning I could accomplish like both of those things with my small group. And now it's like, okay, like, I can teach through video format, but that doesn't have the same relational aspect. And it's interesting because, like, I know for younger kids, the videos actually do fulfill their, like, relational needs in some ways, or they, like, feel like it does, because they see that as, like, an interaction with me. So, like, there's kind of this, like, in-between age group, like, probably around, like, preschool, kindergarten, where they see me on TV and they're like, I've had my fill of Sarah. Or, like, Sarah asked me a question and I answered.
Yeah.
Which is so sweet. But, like, for our older kids, like, they know, oh, like, this is a screen. Like, this isn't filling my relational needs. And so it's like, how do we do that right now?
I also wonder about the idea of the separation that we put in the relational and the learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like how we parse those apart in ways that is probably unhelpful. And what I mean is, like, when we say, oh, it's just relationship, that's just like or yes, this component is the relationship building component or whatever, that is teaching.
Yeah.
Like, you're modeling teaching that cannot be taught in any other way.
Yeah.
Right. And that that it's not yeah, these are not things that you can just, say XYZ and then, oh yeah, it'll soak in, etc. Like, no, they must be taught in this way. And so yeah, there's an element of like, what are we modeling, and what are we not calling teaching that actually is teaching, and that would benefit from being framed as, oh, this is a way that we teach each other as well.
Yeah.
Which makes me think about like the art form of the sermon, and its role in place, and how, like, are there ways for us to do teaching in a way that like bridges these, the relational and the teaching together, that might be um, really beneficial and rich, and how much energy are we putting into, and time are we putting into teaching and learning this way versus teaching and learning this way, because I think they all belong, but I also think that there's a really great benefit to wrestling through, yeah, what those benefits and what those drawbacks might be, and yeah, in what, yeah, and for our time, what actually might be the most helpful.
Yeah, I was part of a church for a while that for a few months, I think it was actually close to 6 months. We like, obviously you can't like just take away the sermon, because like people come to churches like really expecting that kind of like teaching from up front. But we transformed half of our sanctuary into actually like cafe style seating. And like we had tall tables and shorter tables, and if you were interested, like you could sit at one of the tables for during the sermon, and we built in like more pauses, and more like interaction points throughout the sermon, so that it could be like even just like a conversation amongst like conversations amongst like the non-theologically trained, or like like just getting insights from other people. But it was a really cool like approach to like teaching in a different way.
That's actually, we just all submitted our annual reports. They're going to be published soon, and that's in my pastor's report, because there were 2 or 3 points this year that we took, like that we did something like that, where we broke the mold a little bit. We stepped outside of our normal rhythm, and we did something where we participate, something where we don't just see me, but where we see each other, in the midst of our Sunday gathering. And like those were highlights. And you're right, like I downloaded less information to people, but those are the ones that stick with you.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because we have a little bit of that going on right now, even on a Sunday morning, with the ability to like for people to share the chats with each other. Like as people are listening to you, Dave, like there's been a few occasions where like people will have a thought and they share it with each other, and then you have a little bit of this like sidebar conversation going on. But there's been like such wisdom and like such like like it's been beautiful to see those moments happen, like during this time.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, how to fold that in.
Yeah. We should talk about the Beatitudes.
For sure.
So, yeah. So just to recap from Sunday, we entered into this section of the Sermon on the Mount called the Beatitudes, where Jesus says, "Blessed are these people and these people and these people," and in many cases they're people who are lowly, people who are counted out and written off, and talked about how it's like Jesus is saying this to a group of people who are the written off and the counted out. They're people who had come to Jesus because they needed something from him. They needed healing in most cases, and so Jesus has been preaching this gospel that heaven is invading earth, that the kingdom of heaven is near, and now we're going to see things differently. And then he looks at these people who are, written off and counted out, and says, essentially, blessed are you guys. Not blessed are those who are super impressive, super strong, super powerful, etc., etc. And then what else did we talk about? Oh yeah, we talked about how not to read the Beatitudes. and blah blah blah. And then we talked about how to read them, which is kind of as corrective lenses that we're gonna kind of see differently. And so ended up by um, saying that thing from Dallas Willard, that you've not understood the message, like the gospel of the kingdom, until there's no limit to whom you can look at and say, blessed are you. Or say, like Jacob said in Genesis 28, God is in this place and I didn't even know it. So it's a different set of lenses. Yeah, it's about, and Alicia, you were alluding to it earlier, this idea of recognizing the blessedness in the midst of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that your first question of the three questions, it asks about where have you seen an unexpected blessing. And it's funny, I kind of like, I had to sit with it, like, like that's interesting the way that that question is framed, because so I think that like having how we learn that there is blessing in these places that we don't maybe initially think there is blessing. I think perhaps maybe it initially has to come through surprises, to really like, reveal to us that, yeah, there is, blessing in that place. But I think that what is really going on and what Jesus is calling us towards is it for it to be not a surprise. Um, and for it to be in fact expected. Like expect blessing in this place. And then I was thinking about like how we might resist that kind of way of thinking because of how it perhaps like potentially diminishes like the heart of it, the hard part of it, or something like that. Like, there is blessing, so it's all good. Like, no, like not that. But again, like a both and. Like, yeah, it's the pits. Yeah, it's you're blessed. Like, yeah, the both and, which requires a reimagining that's really challenging. And the heart shift. Right, that you've been talking about is like that goes super deep to be able to look at a circumstance and to say like, I feel like I'm broken to pieces, or like this circumstance in my life is terrible, or looking at the collective and just like mourning for what's happening, etc. Right, like that's very pertinent to the time we're in right now, right? But then also saying okay, like with expectation, like and there is blessing here, so let's see it as well.
Yeah. And for us, like, just thinking we post enlightenment people, like you said, both and, like post enlightenment, post science, we're so used to binary thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the both and wisdom that is present in other times and places. And so we're like, whatever, like we're doing a science experiment and it's like, did the water boil or did it not boil? Like it's either, right? That's the way, a framework for seeing reality. And so you ask someone how they're doing, and they can't, like, it's hard for us to say like blessing and struggle. Or hard for us to, maybe that's a bad example because we say things to sound good for people, but like internally, if I'm saying to myself, how am I doing today? Has this been a good day or a bad day?
Right.
It's not an and.
And you know what?
Actually an and.
Yeah. It makes me think about your comment about the fact that this is the age that we are, that we're in, and this is the way that we frame and think. And so much of, our language use shapes our conceptions of the world, and so much of our language is, it comes out of the binary. Like it comes, those are the frameworks under which we perceive the world, and therefore it's so much more hidden and more deep within us than we maybe even realize. And so therefore the challenge of doing both and is extremely hard, because it takes a lot of intention and a lot of And a lot of like, yeah, potentially things like being surprised and then, and then moving in, um, with curiosity, moving forward as to like, oh, like maybe this could mean this, right? And so I think having a curiosity is really important too.
Mm-hmm.
Heidi says, when my brother died, our family really pulled together. My relationship with him was my closest family relationship. Out of losing him, I gained a stronger relationship with my other brother. And then several years later, we lost my sister-in-law and then our dad. And then my dad, our family pulled together even more. Through loss, relationships have grown. Yeah, Heidi, when reading those, I read, yeah, and you know what? Like, through loss, sometimes things get really like torn apart in really crazy ways. And also, I feel really blessed to be able to say like I've experienced that too, right? And I think that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people um, yeah, are grateful that comes through the pain. I think about my like just our circumstances with my family this last, couple years, um, which short version, my sister's children got removed from their custody because they were accused of child abuse. And so 2 years later, in a court case later, the children were given back to them because the allegations were found to be untrue. And that's like our family is as closer than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I am so thankful for that. Would we wish the experience on anyone? Absolutely not. Like it was trash, but there are like such beautiful things that emerged from the circumstance because we were able to say like, okay, what are the gifts here, and to really embrace those.
Yeah, I think like I'm also one of the things that I've been like as we've been starting to dive into the Beatitudes, and like we're actually going to be learning about the Beatitudes this summer with our kids. So that was kind of so like also prepping that. I've been thinking about like hindsight and like looking back on things and like wanting to develop like I think this goes along with what you're saying like Alicia about like sometimes we're surprised by the blessings in something, or like for me it's like, oh, looking back I can see the blessing in it. I want to work on like developing this like lens of like seeing the blessing like in the present, like as I'm in this like difficult place. And a few like probably 2 years ago, like I was really reflecting on this, and like there were some really hard things that I went through in my childhood, and yet those were the times that I felt like closest to God, and I felt like I could actually like feel his presence, and like had such a good relationship with him. And then as things got easier, it was so easier to just like be my own person. I didn't need God. And so a few years ago, or probably 18 months ago now, I was like, God, like I really wish that like I could just have that close connection with you again. Like I would even take like going through difficult things again, like if it meant I could like feel that sense of connection with you. And God answered that prayer. And but like it's been a really interesting journey to be like, okay, like things are hard, but I'm going to see God like through this time. Like it's not going to be something where it's like I get to the end of the tunnel and look back and be like, oh, those were the moments where God is in. I'm like, I want to like realize them now.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's been an interesting time, but
yeah. Part of what I can't remember if I said this on Sunday, but Willard says it is that like we tend to think well-being exists somewhere else, and part of what the Beatitudes are doing is calling us to see that there's well-being, there's blessedness in the midst of where we are now, and not always have that maybe later it'll be good, maybe later God will work, or an if only kind of thinking.
Which makes me think, and this is a thought that came that came up when watching the sermon last Sunday was like when Jesus says, and I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts about this, like when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is near, part of me thinks that there's something like he's saying that in a sassy way, like in a way that's like it's like it's nearer than you think, like like way nearer than you think, like that kind of
Interesting.
like that's a tone that I was like, I wonder if that's in there because I there's something about that that really resonates with me.
Hmm.
Like the kingdom of heaven is near, as in like y'all like here it is.
You might be right. I can see that.
Right? Like, yeah, I want to let that one work on me a little bit more and really, yeah, and really process in light of like the yeah our future teachings around the Sermon on the Mount too, and like yeah, because I think that there's something there.
Hmm. That's a good tidbit. Thanks. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down.
Hey,
We all need a little bit
Saturday.
more sassy Jesus.
Well, and you know what? And you know why? What lead me to think that too is that like the tone of the Sermon on the Mount,
Yep.
right? Like
Yeah.
that really is congruent with the tone.
Mm-hmm. Dave, did you want to touch on some other
Yeah, we should.
questions? So we have
Yes.
so we kind of spent some time talking about how we experienced unexpected blessing amidst poverty and mourning. The next one that you had was, whom have you counted out who the Beatitudes are inviting you to count in?
Yeah.
I
So
love
there,
these
there
questions.
you go. Yeah. So I've been thinking about this question this week because like I think that we categorize people in our brains. You know, I think that um, we have a category like of, okay, these are the people who are like candidates for the work of God in their lives, right? And then there's people who are like they're not really candidates. Maybe one day they'll be eligible for God to do something in their lives. Um, you know,
Oh
and
my god.
I think there's something so powerful about like the people who can see like people as candidates who aren't normally seen as candidates, right? Like I hear someone I went to seminary with wound up like working at Salvation Army Gateway of Hope, right? And so here's people experiencing homelessness, um, mental health issues, addiction issues, you know, and like let's be real, like most of the work that the church does is not aimed at these people, and is, you know, to our shame. And and so this lady I went to seminary with, she actually shared at the church a couple of years ago, but like she's got a different set of lenses. And I would argue it's beatitude lenses, where she's going, these are people who, you know, right now, like there's a whole bunch of mess in their lives, but God does stuff in their lives.
You
And
know, it's
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's so I'm just like excited to comment because it's so pertinent that you bring that example up because I ever since she shared, I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it. That particular Sunday was so important and impactful to me.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I was even gonna bring her up just now, like,
Whoa.
yeah, because she's an example of cracking like somebody who can help crack our hearts open to the blessing and to the teaching that these people who we count out like yeah what their gifts are to us um, and and I think that there is like what Jesus is doing is he is flipping this thing on its head. Like he's saying like y'all you got it wrong. Like this is where the blessing's at. And so if we let that really sink in for our time today, like that's extremely challenging and also makes me think of okay, so how? And so for me it's like okay, so hearing the voices of the marginalized and making space for them in actually really tangible ways, like that's challenging and that's something that I think that we're that honestly that I feel like called to do within my own life, and hopefully we can, do that more as a community. And then as far as like actually putting teeth to that like her coming as a speaker is a great example of one of the ways we can start to do that.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was
So
interesting.
let's do more.
Yeah, totally. I was I can't remember when I last preached, but I spent some time thinking about this when we were in First Timothy, and like this idea that like we can share the gospel with some people, but like some people like, oh no, they're just too far, like too far out of like God's reach. Like, oh yeah, like there's like a like kind of like a line drawn in the sand.
What
It
context
makes
do
me
we bring
think
that up
about
What?
like how do we conceive the gospel then? Like what version of the gospel do we think is too far beyond?
Yeah. Well, so Dave, I brought it up from Paul saying that he's the worst sinner. In that like all of us in comparison to like God. So it was 1 Timothy 12 to 17 or whatever. But just saying like yeah, like so like Paul, but like, I was saying like Paul's kind of saying that like like nobody is unreachable. Um,
Yeah.
no one's too far gone. Like if Paul could be saved, then anyone could.
Totally. Yeah.
And so, but no, it's been really interesting because for me at least, like just like kind of going back to your question here, Dave, of like who do we write off? Like sometimes like for me, like I write off like the people who are close to Jesus, but like not quite there. Like who like maybe have been raised in the church, and like like consider themselves Christian, but like aren't actually willing to like hear Jesus. Like for me, those people are like I tend to think of them more as a write off than like the people who like maybe society would write off. Right. Like it's easier to like show somebody like light when they're in total darkness than like if they're like in a fairly well lit room. Like they're just not willing to see it. So for me, the answer to the question is like I count out the people who like think they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, like Jesus at this specific point in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about how he's talking about the irreligious write-offs. But you're right, there are actually religious write-offs.
Yeah.
And we need to be open to the religious write-offs being the Bible thumping holier than thou people. Like there's surprise there too, and
God loves them too.
Yeah, and sometimes we feel justified in making jabs at them because they're like the insider group or they're the powerful group or what have you. But you're right.
Yeah, that's a really challenging one for me too. And yeah, I also thought about this question in terms of just like general beyond the context of church or religion, just general societal perspective, and like whether you consider yourself a Christian or not, how do we view this type of person or that type of person, etc. The idea of explicit bias comes to mind, and I think is really, really important. And so, like, short version, we all have implicit biases that we wouldn't really even realize, like cognitively, that we have. But we have them, and there's robust research that demonstrates this. And so whether it be towards a racial group or gender or socioeconomic privilege or like any of those things, body size is a big one. And so I was thinking about like and trying to really do work to uncover my implicit biases and like how challenging that is. And one that's come up in the last couple of years for me is the body size one. And more recently, I've run into research that demonstrates that uncovers the fact that body size is and body fat is not causal evidence, but correlative evidence toward poorer health, um, and that health is actually much more complex. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so how this like fat phobia is like a buzzword that's kind of being used. How fat phobia is so written now, so and it wasn't before, but now is so written into so many of our systems, including our health system, based on what's perceived to be causal evidence, but it's actually not. And so body mass index is a great example of that. Is like that as a benchmark of health in itself is really unhelpful, and perhaps now needs to be pushed back on quite a bit, because what the research is showing is that people who have pushed back on ideas about body control and about regulating size as something that will help health are actually more healthy humans. Um, and so therefore, yeah, how do I view my own body? How do I view other people's bodies? And how does that how what connections are being made implicitly in my mind towards myself and towards other about their blessedness? Um, and so that's been really interesting and challenging to work through and puzzle through, and to think, what are my perspectives here, and how do I conceive this human in light of what I'm seeing. um yeah,
Yeah.
so which leads me to my I'm like the create your own beatitude is the best.
Okay. Give it to us.
I've got a few that I jotted down too.
Yeah, I got a
Okay.
couple. Okay,
I've got a
so-
list of ones that people sent in, so you guys go
Oh,
first. and
love
then
it.
I'll read
Okay.
up the ones I got. Before
So
you
I
do,
got-
actually, I just want to call out what Carolyn, like the connection that Carolyn made. I wonder if
yeah.
that goes back to the binary piece of our culture. We see people in black and white. God doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes and amen.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
So yeah, this was challenging, and I don't like I kind of have two versions. So blessed are the fat, for they know what it means to endure. In the sense of like the body control messages are everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. And or blessed are the fat, for they will be freed from control. Yeah. So those are the ones. Well, those are my first ones. Then do you want me to share my other ones, and then we can?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so these are like unrelated to changing subjects a little bit in terms of. Yeah. So here are three that I came up with. So blessed are those who work, and this is in light of COVID also, and in light of like loosening restrictions about what people are excited about and what sort of services people are really missing. Blessed are those who work in nail salons, for they are the true servants of our time.
Love
So
that.
like I think I just think about the demographics that are working in nail salons, and how sacrificial those lives can really be, which is just interesting to me. Blessed are those who visit the food bank, for they know the true grace of a full plate of food. And then the last one, blessed are the chronically ill, for their empathy reaches far.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sarah, what have you got?
Well, so I'm gonna share them, and this is me being vulnerable. Like I usually before I share things, like I'll like break it down, make sure that it's like as accurate as it can be, and like I'll like try to analyze it from every single way. I haven't had a chance to do that, but I'm gonna share them. And so
It's fine. If they're wrong, we'll just destroy you in the comments, right?
Yeah, perfect, great.
Sorry.
No, I can take it, but like I don't. I'm trying to be vulnerable here so that other people can feel. Not not relevant, but I appreciated yours in light of COVID, Alicia. Those were good. But mine, so I've got three. Blessed are the suffering in darkness, for the light shines brightly for them. Blessed are the broken, for their pieces are held by God. And blessed are the abandoned, for they are claimed. So those are my three.
Oh, those are good. Okay, I'll give you what I've got so far.
Okay.
Yeah. So this I'll reread mine, and then there's 4 that I got from other people. So mine was blessed are the physic. By the way, I say blessed, not blessed.
Okay.
I'm early modern English all the way, man.
It's 2021. No, it's 2020. I mean, why did I say anyways? Blessed are the physically distanced, for God is not distant from them. Blessed are those who have no work, for they shall be well rested. We are blessed when we're at the end of our rope, because we know that God is our only hope. That's Kim's, and it rhymes. Blessed are those who aren't driving as much, for they will experience no stress. Blessed are those, this one I love. Blessed are those whose lives have been uprooted, for they will find their way again to a new life. Good stuff.
So
Good stuff.
We should probably wrap up. We're over time already.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always such good conversation. And I'm actually not finished my drink yet today.
Me neither.
Still got cold coffee.
And she's still drinking it.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any SLC updates that we have to do. Remember, communion on Sunday. Set aside some kind of elements. And that's all I got to say on the matter.
No other comments for us, Dave?
That's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, if you have time to submit a reading, Dave, are we still looking for Matthew 5?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be in Matthew 5 for at least a couple of months. So great. Matthew 5 would be good.
Submit a reading if you're able to. There's instructions for that in the email that Dave had, or in our newsletter, Dave.
Yep.
There's some great instructions. I have really appreciated the instruction of if you make a mistake, just go back to the previous paragraph. You don't have to start again.
It's video. Video.
Yeah. And aside from that, I think we will
send in a greeting video.
Oh yes, greeting videos are great.
We would love to see that, even if it has almost no content. Your beautiful saying hello is the content.
We love seeing those. Yeah, totally.
Send us a video that says, "Hi, church, we miss you. We're doing fine. Can't wait to be together." That's the whole video.
Dave's already given you the script.
On Sunday. Yeah.
So we'll see you Sunday, and then again next week, and we'd love to get more people involved in these conversations. So like if you are somebody who enjoys tuning in, maybe encourage a friend to tune in as well. Yeah. We'd love to get more people involved in this. So.
And thanks to Alicia for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Alicia.
And bringing her wisdom. Blessings as you teach in this in this pandemic.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See you Sunday, guys.